Hey guys, thanks to a fellow retro computing aficionado, Richard Thomas, who lives here in Portland, I acquired this old PC case from him. Now this case has seen better days. It's kind of a cool AT style. It's pretty dirty on the front with some marks and tape residue, and on the top there's definitely some scratches and sticky tape residue. I don't think the sticky residue is anything I can't take care of, but obviously the scratches that are on this case, well, those are permanent, but they're not so bad. The case has a kind of cool, funky styling to it with these diagonal lines, and then of course the usual horizontal lines here, which always fill up with dirt and dust. Typically with these old cases, if these covers are missing, it's pretty much impossible to find new ones that fit. Sometimes on these actually screw in, and I can feel screws here. So it's perfect that these two are here. The machine has the fun turbo reset panel here, and it looks like the turbo LED is the type that lights up, and the DTK TECH-1230 sticker here, so that's kind of neat. I like it. The side of the computer's pretty run-of-the-mill, but this is the type with the honkin' AT power switch. Let's just listen to it. Nice. There's something very satisfying about that clunkiness. Checking out the back of the case, it's pretty run-of-the-mill. Right away we're starting to notice a couple issues. Take a look here at the power supply. There's some rust spots starting to form. Over here there's some evidence of rust as well. This seemed like a typical generic case, but I'm guessing, judging by the fact that there's a serial number sticker and this very fancy model number sticker, this is probably a complete PC that was bought from the DTK computer company. The computer was made in Taiwan, but I don't know where they were based out of. But since there's an FCC ID on here, I'm assuming that maybe they had US operations. Let's take a look inside of the computer case. Taking a look inside the case, what's interesting right off the bat is this isn't a full-size AT case. In other words, you can only accept what is known as a baby AT motherboard. Here's an example of what's called a baby AT motherboard. It's also the same size as the original IBM PC XT and IBM PC motherboards. These motherboards don't extend much past the keyboard connector, and as you can see in this case, this is all that's going to fit in here. In the original IBM PC AT cases, they were significantly wider, and the power supply had a notch cut out in the bottom part, so the motherboard, which would extend further over to the right, would be able to sit in here. Here's an example of a full-size AT motherboard. This is the same size that was in the IBM 5170 original PC AT, and clearly this will not fit inside this case. If you look here at the power supply connector and the keyboard connector, they line up properly with the case, but clearly this part of the motherboard would extend under where the power supply is now, and the drive chassis also interferes. This computer also uses drive rails. That's a little bit unfortunate, but that was a copy of the IBM PC 5170. I do happen to have one set of the drive rails for this computer, so I can use those as a template to make some additional ones. Now, besides cleaning this case, before I can use it, I see a problem here. And watch if I move these cables out of the way. You can see a good amount of rust here on the power supply. And notice here this Velcro strip. Typically on 286s and 386s, you would have a NiCad rechargeable battery pack, and it was typically kind of Velcroed somewhere inside the case. And I have a feeling it was stuck right here. Those batteries over time have a tendency to leak really badly, and it's very, very corrosive. Taking out the power supply, I'm going to say that that's definitely what happened here. You can see that enough battery has to leak down into the chassis that it started to rust this part of it as well. Here on the screw there's a good amount of rust. Here's the bottom of the power supply as well, and wow, what a mess. This doesn't look like it's gotten inside the power supply at all, so there's a good chance that this power supply works fine and that I can fix this corrosion by cleaning it up and painting. So I think the first step is taking the power supply apart, taking a look inside, making sure it's fine, and if it is, then I'm gonna work on restoring this case. I popped the cover of this power supply. The real rust is over here on this side, but you know what? I think we lucked out. Didn't look like any of the corrosion came inside. The board looks dirty, but otherwise okay. So I'm gonna take this apart the rest of the way, and then I can attack this. Well, so I've cleaned up the power supply a little bit. One of the annoying things is when you take it apart, the power switch and the power sockets, it's all soldered together after it goes together. I ended up cutting the wires, and then I've cleaned up the two pins here so I can resolder everything. But on the power supply, it's looking a little bit better here, but this is still rusty quite a bit. The bottom was really bad with all of that corrosion and kind of crap from the batteries. What I did is I sanded this down a little bit first, and then I used paper towels and some water and baking soda solution. It's a little bit abrasive, so it scrapes away a lot of the crap. I did that on all the side. It's looking pretty shiny actually. This is a good way to polish up a power supply, but unfortunately on the inside, we ended up with some rust. So I'm probably going to hit that with some of my rust inhibitor spray. I'm definitely going to paint this side of the power supply with the black rust inhibitor, the inside as well. If you have screws that are rusty, put them in some vinegar and let them soak overnight. It will leave them unplated though, because if the rust has eaten away any chrome plating. So I recommend just hitting them with a little bit of black paint or some type of a paint. Cover them up, keep them from rusting any further. Alright, so I blew out the dust out of the case, and yeah, just a little bit of the corrosion there. Ooh, it's white powdery. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to attack this with some baking soda as well, a little bit of water, really kind of scrub it down, try to get out as much of this crap as possible. Then I'm definitely going to hit it with some paint. Down here, there's a little bit of dust. Not bad at all. I don't see any corrosion on this black part, so that's not a problem. Ooh, okay, flipping the case over here. One thing that's odd is a little bit of corrosion has sort of seeped through this hole here and has attacked the bottom. So I'm definitely gonna scrape this. I probably will use my wire brush here, go outside and just sort of scrape this down and try and get it down to the bare metal as much as possible. And then I will hit that with the rust proofing paint as well. Funny is the case has the rubber feet. They are extremely hard, but there are 4 of them. But one of them is somehow moved from here into there. Let's see about getting this off here. I don't really want this on. Wow, that's disgusting. It's soft and very gooey. Alright, well, that's gross. Alright, so let's look at the top of the case. First off, there's this gross tape residue here. And this is a perfect thing to use baking soda on. Baking soda is pretty abrasive, so you just sort of spread it on and rub away. But it can take the paint off, so just be careful. So there's a little bit of residue left here, but I don't want to go too far with the baking soda, so I'm going to clean up the top of the case and I'm going to switch to a magic eraser, which is my normal favorite thing to get off something like scuff marks on plastic and paint. It also is an abrasive, so it can take the plastic right off or the paint right off, so you should be careful with it. Okay, so there's a little bit of residue from the tape, very minor, and there is some discoloration on the paint, but here's a piece of magic eraser. So I'm gonna see what happens if I go over it with this. So you see it's like a big gray. That's actually a little bit of the paint coming off. So I'll give the whole case a once over. And it's pretty amazing. See all that crap coming off? And then where there's scuff marks, I just push harder. Right there's a scuff mark. It's gray. And this is actually a scratch in the paint, so that's not going to come off. But that's a scuff over there. This is a scratch, so that's not coming off. But there's definitely some scuffs along the top edge here. And then right here, there's a scuff. Let's do that with the magic eraser. A little clean part. Let's try this. Look at that, it's gone. So magic eraser, because it's an abrasive, leaves a little bit of residue behind. So what I like to do is hit it with some Windex or whatever your favorite cleaner is. And you can see it's still picking up crap, but that's a lot of the residue from magic eraser. It's like the paint particles. This thing now looks great. It's probably about as good as it's gonna get. Now let's attack the front of the case. I was concerned there might be a little yellowing on here, but I don't think there is, because this is one of the face plates. And looking at the back, where you're not usually going to have yellowing, pretty much uniform color all the way around. So I think first I'm just going to hit it with some Windex. Give it a good clean, especially in these cracks there. And then of course with the cracks, just got to run the take a paper towel, fold it up into a line, just sort of run it through. And that's picking up some crud. Well, it already looks a million times better, but let's hit it with the magic eraser. So that 3 just disappears pretty quickly. Alright, so this is pretty much it for the top of the case. Considering this computer is as old as it is and has an unknown life, I think I like it just the way it is. It has a couple scratches and scars here and there, which is fine because this isn't a brand new computer. This is what I use to treat rust. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I found this kind of works. I start with the stuff in my right hand here, the Rust-Oleum Rust Reformer, which it says it converts rust into like a black material, and when you paint it, it just looks like you're painting it with black paint, but I'm assuming some type of chemical reaction is going on. It says to wait 24 hours after using this, and then you can apply a regular enamel type paint on top of it, and that's what I did. I'm terrible at using spray paint, so I always end up with a drip or two, but honestly, when it's on things that you don't normally see, like the inside of a case, I don't really care that much. Okay, it's been a couple days. I painted this up, so I just wanted to see how it goes. This is the power supply. Let's peel off this masking tape and take a look. Alright, I didn't do the perfect job painting this. I mean, the main point was to get rid of the rust that was on this side here. Not to mention my masking was pretty poor, so you got like a clean spot here with some overspray. Overall, the bottom cleaned up really well. I should have probably painted that as well, but there was no rust visible here, so I got most of the battery residue. Alright, so the case is all cleaned up and it's ready to go back together. So first step is going to be putting this power supply back together. So it's been a few weeks since I took this apart, and it's going to be interesting to put this back together. I had to cut some of the wires to get the power supply board out because they were soldered sort of as it was being assembled. I'm also going to change out the fan. I have an Arctic fan. These are just a bit much quieter, fluid dynamic bearing. Whenever I take something apart that has a fan, I usually pop these in just to quiet it down a little bit and put something that will last a longer time. Okay, so we're coming along with the power supply. The mains feed after the switch here comes in and connects right here to the board. So the switch is set up properly, board is in. I have the grommet back in here around the wires. And all we need to do now is attach the fan. And let's turn this on and let's check out the voltages. So I got the multimeter here. All right, 5.1, close enough. You know, these old supplies don't have the best regulation in the world. I don't see any potentiometers on here whatsoever, so I guess there's just no way to adjust this. And let's check out the other one. Oh, 11.8. Yeah, not bad. And of course, with more load on the power supply, it might regulate actually a little bit better than it's doing right now. Probably when the motherboard's hooked up, it will be even better. All right, so my 200 watt power supply back together, DTK brand. This goes on the back of the computer here. And it mounts with these screws as well into the back of the case, and let's go put the computer together. Alright, so inside the computer, things are looking pretty good now. This was all converted into black with the Rust-Oleum, and now it's pretty simple. We just pop the power supply in, give it a shove, and we're looking good already. Back of the computer, I painted up a little bit as well. There was a tiny bit of rust here and there. Alright, let's get this power supply into the case. A couple more parts to put in. This very fun turbo reset little panel here goes on, and of course the speaker. The speaker sits right behind this front grill area, so you get a nice loud beep. For motherboard, I am going to be putting this 46 motherboard into this computer. It's a 46DX266, has a bunch of RAM, and this is a nice VESA local bus motherboard. So this case seems to have non-standard motherboard mounting holes. Several of the mounts are screw mounts. It doesn't have any of the type that slide in, which is typical for these AT motherboards. So It's a little bit of a proprietary mounting system. On this motherboard, I've sort of stuck on what I think will work. Okay, so the only issue is over here in the corner. It's just resting on the edge of the case a little bit. So I'm just gonna shave off a little piece of that because it's bending the motherboard right here. Okay, so I chopped off the edge of this so it no longer hits the edge of the case, which is good. But the problem is now, of course, is it's floating. I have some of these rubber feet. I'm just gonna stick one of these and I'm going to put this right here. All right, it's not perfect, but it's definitely resting on that rubber pad, so it's good. So now I can push down here if I plug slots in here. All right, this mounting seems to be a success. I have the 3 screws in, so the motherboard is definitely secured in here, and I put a VGA card in here just as a test to see if the alignment was good. I'd say the alignment's perfect. So as I talked about previously, this case uses rails. There are 3 rail slots here. They go in and there's a little screw hole here for how the rail attaches. Problem is I only got these 2 rails with this computer. I asked my friend if he had any, and he didn't, but I ended up having a stroke of luck. So there's gonna be another video about it, but I recently acquired a bunch of equipment, old computer stuff, and in this box full of very rusty and falling apart computers was several rails. They were originally the silver color like these, but they had been submerged in water and subjected to the elements for a long time, so were very rusty. So I did my usual rust treatment to them, and here they are. This case, of course, would need 6 for all 3 bays, so I have these 2 plus 4 of these. Okay, so I got rails on both of these. I used some of the black rails on the CD-ROM drive, and I use the original silver ones on this 5 1/4 inch drive. There's one thing to keep in mind with these types of rails. You have to use tapered head screws because they need to be flush with the rails. If you use regular screws, they stick out, and these will not work. You will not be able to slide them into the computer case. And let's slide in the CD-ROM. Once the drives slide in, on this case, you just use a normal screw to screw the rail in, and that prevents the drive from coming out. Some cases, like I think the IBM 5160 uses plastic rails, and then there's a little metal bracket that kind of screws on each side that holds it in. These look like they are lined up great. So that means I have a full set of rails for this case, which is fantastic. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to put in this computer when it comes to drives and things, but luckily I have 2 of the faceplates that can cover up here, so if I really want to just put 1 floppy drive, I can do that. Well, there we go. I'd say I'm done for now. Restoring one of these old cases doesn't take too much effort. It's a little bit of elbow grease, a bit of cleaning up the plastics, and using that magic eraser on it. And then if you have any corrosion or rust, just dealing with that. You just need a little bit of physical work to remove the rust. And then you use some rust converter like Rust-Oleum here in the United States, or I'm sure there's plenty of other products like that elsewhere in the US. But just treat all the rusted areas and just sort of coats it and keeps it from corroding more. I'd say, considering this was free and probably destined for the scrap bin because of the corrosion, I've got a pretty nice computer out of it. This case is going to be a great housing for whatever AT motherboard I decide to throw in it, and I hope to have this for a long time in the future. Anyways, if you found any of this interesting, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. Feel free to comment down below. I'm sure people will have some comments on some of the things I did to this computer, and maybe how I could have done it better or differently. And you can subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching. Bye.